This is the moon. You've seen it before, I'm sure. If you haven't, go outside and take a look sometime. It's better in real life. What do you see in it? A man carrying sticks? A banyan tree? A crab? In the UK and the US, we know that familiar face as the man in the moon. But have you ever wondered why it looks like that? And why is he always staring at us? Seriously, it's kinda creepy. The moon is a natural satellite. That means it's a ball of rock that orbits around the Earth. Scientists still aren't sure exactly how it got there, and that's a subject for another video. But it did so long before any humans were on the scene. About 4.4 billion years before, in fact. Back when it formed, it would have spun quickly on its axis, just like the Earth. Today, it still rotates, but much more slowly. And that's because, over time, the pull of gravity from the Earth has tugged at the rotating moon and gradually slowed it down. Now it takes 28 and a bit days to rotate all the way around, which, not at all coincidentally, is exactly the same amount of time it takes to orbit the Earth. When you add those two rotations together, it means that one side of the moon is always facing the Earth, and so we only ever see one face, that staring face of the man in the moon. The process is called tidal locking, and it's especially common when orbiting bodies are really close to each other. For example, planets that are really close to their stars can quickly become tidally locked, leaving one side scorched and baked, and the other, facing away from the star, totally frozen. But back to the moon. We always see the same pattern because of tidal locking. Its orientation differs between the northern hemisphere and the southern, but it's always the same pattern of light and dark splotches. And us humans have got an uncanny knack for seeing recognisable shapes in abstract patterns. We can see animals in clouds, see faces in pretty much anything, and probably the less said about Rorschach ink blot tests, the better. It's a phenomenon called pareidolia, and it's the result of millions of years of natural selection. Those of our ancestors that could spot and identify an object with limited information were the ones most likely to live to see another day, and make babies with that same skill. Now it's deeply ingrained into our species' psyche. In the case of the moon, what you see probably depends on what your culture says you should see. In China and Korea, you might be encouraged to see a rabbit with a mixing bowl, cooking up a potion of immortality. In New Zealand, myth tells of a Maori maiden who disrespected the moon and was exiled there for eternity. And of course, in the UK and the US, our constant companion has a benevolent face looking down on us. But the fact remains that really, all of these patterns are just a giant ink blot in the sky, ready for our own unique interpretations. How that ink blot came about is not so much a matter of psychology, but of geology, or rather selenology, the science of the moon itself. The first maps of the moon's curious patterns were made by Italian astronomers in the 17th century. On those maps, the dark areas were called maria, meaning seas, while the lighter parts were called terrae, or continents. 300 years of scientific advancement saw ever more detailed observations, resulting in maps, treaties, and eventually photographs of our satellite companion, along with greater understanding. There were no real seas on the surface of the moon, not a drop of running water. So why the different colours? That revelation didn't come until the 20th century, when all eyes were turned to the moon as the space race began in earnest. In just 12 short years, the US and USSR went from intercontinental missiles to satellites to animals and eventually humans in space. On the 20th of July 1969, 50 years ago, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the Apollo 11 mission were the first humans to set foot on the moon. 10 more Americans followed them, in 5 more Apollo missions over the following 3 years. But those missions were more than just an expensive weekend away. They were an opportunity to do some hard science. And among the rigorous schedule of experiments, the astronauts brought back more than 380 kilos of moon rock. That, along with a further 46 missions that have landed on, roved around and orbited the moon over the last 50 years, have sent our understanding of our natural satellite through the roof. And that understanding has given new perspective to the distant splotches that make up the man, woman, rabbit, whatever on the moon. We now know that the maria, the black areas once mistaken for seas, are actually flat plains of dark basalt. On Earth, basalt is a volcanic rock formed when hot lava cools and solidifies on the surface. On the moon, that volcanic rock is spread over vast swathes of the moon's near side. The rest of the moon is made up of a different kind of rock and a different kind of landscape. Beyond the plains, there are rolling hills of white anorthosite. On Earth, we find anorthosite where molten rock has solidified underground. Lightweight minerals float to the top and crystallise in place, making a layer of anorthosite. And that's what we find in the lunar highlands, that top layer of anorthosite with its lightweight, light-coloured minerals. So flat black lava plains and lumpy hills of magma froth is all it takes to make a man in the moon. But what exactly made that landscape in the first place isn't entirely clear. Annoyingly, no one was around when the moon formed, or for most of the intervening 4.4 billion years, so we've only got the information from lunar missions to go by. What we think happened is that the moon was once red hot and molten, and cooled from the outside in. But a continual bombardment of meteors created giant craters, cracking the outer crust and letting the lava from the soft, gooey centre seep out. That lava leakage created huge lava seas, which eventually cooled to make the flat basalt plains. A few more impacts to make a few more craters, and voila, the moon's familiar face, or whatever it is you see. So the next time you get outside for a bit of moon gazing, spare a thought for its violent volcanic history. And whoever you see in the ink blot in the sky, perhaps they're just happy that it all seems to have calmed down for a while. This video has been part of a space-based collaboration with the wonderful edutubers at We Create Edu to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the moon landing. Click the link at the end to find out more about space and our lunar companion. Here at The Science, we love finding out the science that surrounds us. If you want to know how something works, or why something is the way it is, let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed finding out that the man in the moon is a big old lava plain, give us a like and subscribe, and we'll be back to treat your retinas with more everyday science.